Now, imagine an ancient civilization that was so wise as to use a living fuel instead of energies that we know today, modern energies that have their harmful side effects. This civilization would be using life force as their primary energy source. So they would be integrated in nature. Those people wouldn't have problems like climatic problems, like all those problems, because life force has inside it what we call homeostasis. It balances all functions, balances temperature, it balances flow, it harmonizes all functions in the body. So building or having a science where you integrate life force in your products, you have a practical science that you can use to solve all your problems today.
And we are live for another episode of Being Human. I'm delighted to say I'm here with Dr. Ibrahim Karim. He is a professor, an architect, and the founder of the science of biogeometry. And he's written books on that topic. And I have only recently become exposed to this idea of the power of shape and geometry. I came across on my social feeds these videos where people put sand on top of speakers and then they put a certain frequency through that speaker and you get different shapes. And these claims that many of the shapes that we see in cathedrals and so on have these healing effects. So I got fascinated by this idea of what, the power of frequency and these geometric shapes in terms of healing and the quality of our experience. And so I'm absolutely delighted to have you, Ibrahim, on the show to talk about these ideas behind biogeometry. I think it's going to be fascinating for the audience, and I can't wait to get into it. So a very warm welcome, Ibrahim.
Well, thank you, Richard. I'm very happy to be with you here. And it's been a long time since we were supposed to meet. So at last we managed to do it.
Yes, indeed. And so I know that you have a fascinating background. You come from an esteemed family. So I wonder if we could just start with a little bit of your potted history, before we get into the meat of the conversation.
Well, my father was an architect who is from the first generation of modern architecture. I mean, he also had his doctor's degree in Switzerland, was at the same time with the pioneers who were developing the school of modern architecture. At the time, there was Salvisberg, there was Corbusier, and all those people, the pioneers of modern architecture. He was with them here in Switzerland. And they started this sort of school of modern architecture right before the Second World War. Then when the Second World War was approaching, many of them who were not Swiss left for their countries. So my father went back to Egypt, and they agreed that in order to promote this modern architecture, this new school around the world, that everyone goes to his country and starts producing a magazine about modern architecture. So my father started the first magazine in the Middle East and started teaching modern architecture at university, and he built so many projects all over the Middle East. He planned most of the capitals and most of the big cities in the Middle East. So he's a very famous name in the field of architecture, especially in modern architecture in the Middle East. And his father, my grandfather, was an engineer who was like a minister of public affairs or for King Fuad and then King Farouk during the monarchy times. So this family goes back then. And then I went.
And this is Egypt.
This is Egypt, yes.
Yeah.
So my father sent me to Switzerland for university. I was in Egypt. I was in a Victoria College. It's an English college according to Oxford and Cambridge curriculum. And when I finished, I thought I was going to go somewhere English-speaking to university. But my father said, no, you're going to go to the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. It's one of the highest ranked in the world. And this is where he had his doctor's degree. This is where modern architecture came out. So I came here not speaking a word of German, and I just plunged in. And so this is where I spent my studies in Zurich. And incidentally, I am in Zurich now. Since the 50s, when I came to study, I come every couple of months to spend a week or two in Zurich. It's like a second home to me. So
right.
I graduated as an architect and then did my PhD in tourism planning that I applied later to bring tourism to the level of the first industry in Egypt by planning the Red Sea, because Egypt didn't have any, let's say, beach tourism, holiday tourism. It was all cultural tourism. As you know, everybody wants to see the pyramids and the temples. But cultural tourism is a very limited sector. It's only 70%, 7% of tourism. 70% is actually holiday tourism, beach tourism, and all that. And in Egypt, when you have temples, when you have all those pyramids and all that, it's a certain pride. So you're not interested in getting tourism to the beaches or holidays and all that. And I told the government, you cannot build tourism as an industry if you don't tailor it to the market needs. Now, the market needs beaches. And I told them, I'm sorry to tell you, but maybe economically, the sand will be more important than the temples and pyramids. So we had a lot of conflict with the government, but at the end, I managed to plan the whole Red Sea area and South Sinai. And after planning it, we got more tourists there than we ever had in Egypt. And tourism became for several years the number one industry in Egypt. So
wow, what an achievement.
Yes, so that was my mission, the industrialization of tourism based on my PhD when I was in Switzerland. I had the chance to apply it in Egypt. Now, my father and grandfather had a great interest in Egyptology. So my father, as Minister of Public Works, of course, he supervised much of the work in Egyptology in Egypt. My father he wrote about 50 manuscripts, some of them are published, about ancient Egypt. And I was for 5 years sort of advisor to the Ministry of Culture and Antiquities, where I put an idea to develop a museum of ancient civilization. It never materialized the way I wanted it to be, but it was a museum where you could trace every profession today, trace it backwards thousands of years to all the way to maybe 5000 BC. So you could actually go, if you're working in the media, let's say, well, you go back and see how did the ancients address information? How,
right.
And you want to know, were the specialists for that? Did the pharaohs have special media people? Or any profession, you could go back and find your roots in that profession. So that was my idea of a new museum, but it never materialized after I shifted to tourism in Egypt. This project was too complex, although accepted by the United Nations, and we put the cornerstone for it, but it was too complex for the antiquities, so they continued with normal museums, with that. So that's about it. And then in the 1970s, I developed the science of biogeometry. I had gone back to Egypt, and then while teaching, the history of architecture, we were always teaching construction methods, styles, architecture styles, cultures, and all different things. But then I noticed one thing, that if you go to a sacred site, you dig under the monuments, and maybe you go down maybe 10 meters or 30 feet, and you'll find traces of an ancient civilization down there. Another monument is down there. If you dig another 10 meters, you could find an even earlier civilization. And this goes on and on, maybe to 5 or 6 levels. Right. That's how Heinrich Schliemann, the German, found the city of Troy. Until then, everybody thought that the Homeric legends were just legends, all this idea of the War of Troy and all that. But then Heinrich Schliemann was working in the area on the western coast, that's now Turkey. And there he was working on some temples there. And as he dug deeper, he found a layer with ancient temples. Then he dug deeper. On the third layer, he found a lot of gold jewelry and things like that. It was a huge stuff down there. And from what was written on it and all that, it was ancient Troy. The way it was in the Homeric legends, it was discovered down there. So my question was, well, why does every civilization come and build on the same spot? There must be something here. So maybe the energy quality of the spot, its effect on the human being, was the most important aspects that the different civilizations throughout history recognized, and those became the sacred power spots of humanity. And so what was the secret there? It must be a certain energy quality that affects people. So in those places, I found that there were always either a well, a stream, a lake, a river. There's always the element. And this water element was actually erupting from deep channels running in underwater streams about 120 meters deep in the rocky strata of the earth. That's why they call this water rock water. And this rock water, the wells of rock water, they never salinate. For example, a normal well, if you will salinate after some time and you have to dig another one. But this water stays fresh for 10,000s of years. So I found that all monuments of humanity were linked one way or another to these sacred power spots with the element of water at the center. Right. So the angles at which underground streams crossed produced or pushed this water in a sort of a wormhole-like motion like this, pushed it to the surface, and then an energetic wormhole was created through multiple dimensions in those places. So those became healing places. And when humanity first came to those places, they actually followed the animals and birds. They would go and found a stream coming up, and then they would look and see that the birds flying in V formations would be coming, and over that spot, they start circling. And they keep circling for a certain number of times, always the same number, and then continuing in a V formation. So this was the beginning of ritual. Humans imitated animals and birds, and this started ritual. So all ritual in any religion in the world is basically water ritual. It's related to water. It's related to those spots. Those spots became spots for healing, spots for burial, and spots for oracles, because the multi-dimensionality of the wormholes going through several energy principles characterized those places. So studying them a bit deeper, I thought, well, if the crossings play a role of underground water here, some other water crossings give actual harmful energy. So here, rock water must flow and cross at certain angles to give those qualities. And then when I thought, well, if we're speaking about angles, then it's coming right into my lap, you know. Okay, this is the only thing I understand as an architect, you know, angles, geometry. Oh, now they're speaking my language, you know. So I started studying the geometry behind all that. And my whole idea was, could I find a geometrical language or geometrical principles that could reproduce this energy quality? And so I looked for energy sciences that determine the quality of energy in any place and all that. So first of all, in Switzerland, I stumbled upon many of the water dowsers who actually could detect this underground water for the churches, for all that, and they were known throughout history. So I studied their methods, and water dowsing was mostly a psychic method.
Right.
But as an engineer, I thought, no, I couldn't depend on psychic methods. So I developed a physics of quality, where the scales had qualities at their units. And then with the physics of quality, I studied what they were doing. And then I developed instruments using quality scales in what I call the physics of quality. Now I developed this physics of quality that I could actually find or determine the quality of energy. Now, with that in hand, I thought now we can develop a geometrical language with which I could reproduce the quality of sacred power spots in any geometrical design. So,
Right.
So all of a sudden, the quality of power spots, why did people always gather around power spots? The history of humanity is the history of power spots, because they used to gather and build whatever their dwellings and around some kind of water, whether it's a lake, whether it's a spring or a river, because of the life force contained in the water. So here we were speaking about a geometry that worked or interacted with life force, a geometry that could recreate life force through resonant connections with higher dimensions. And so I developed a course. Geometry, the word geometry means, geo means the earth. Metry means measurement. So the word geometry came from ancient Egypt, because after the flood of every year, when the water sort of cancelled all the boundaries between the different fields, they wanted to redo the boundaries. They developed the triangle that's known later as the Pythagorean triangle, 3, 4, 5, to have the 90-degree. And so Egypt, every year after the flood, they used this surveying methods, this measurement methods with metry to reproduce the boundaries again every year after the flood. So that's the origin of the word geometry, measurement of the earth. But then I thought, now I'm interested in life force. So I had to invent a new word. So I got the word bio, which is life force, attached it to geometry, and then I have biogeometry. That means it's the measurement of life force, not surveying, but measuring life force itself. That became my interest, how to measure life force. And so we developed the geometrical language with which we can detect those life force areas. But the most important thing, now with this new design language, I could create life force in my designs. So I found myself actually using the forming language of nature, that to form any shape, you had to be a sort of conductor of higher levels of life force and bring it into the shape, so your shape became multidimensional, got connected to life force. Otherwise, your shapes wouldn't be alive. So a shape connected to life force would be integrated, an integral part of nature.
Right. Yeah.
And so I found the ancients were actually building architecture that were no different from trees or plants. They planted their architecture in life force areas. Now, if I could make a modern biogeometry language based on a modern physics in such a way that I could have design principles to create a sacred power spot or a life force connection with every object I design, be it a chair, be it a house, be it a city, whatever, it would automatically connect. This is the science of biogeometry. By following the forming process of nature, that you design with life force as your main energy. Now imagine, what is the energy that fuels most of creation?
Yeah.
99.999% is fueled by life force. What makes the planets revolve around the sun? Why don't they fall somewhere? What makes all those galaxies out there? What makes plants grow? What fuels every motion on Earth? How can birds fly? And if you ask yourself, it is life force. So life force is a holistic thing. We'll go into that a bit later, but it's an intelligent, holistic type of energy that's the background of creation that fuels every motion here. Now, imagine an ancient civilization that was so wise as to use a living fuel instead of energies that we know today, modern energies that have their harmful side effects.
Right.
This civilization would be using life force as their primary energy source. So they would be integrated in nature. Those people wouldn't have problems like climatic problems, like all those problems, because life force has inside it what we call homeostasis. It balances all functions, balances temperature, it balances flow, it harmonizes all functions in the body. So building or having a science where you integrate life force in your products, you have a practical science that you can use to solve all your problems today. Now, it's very easy to listen to me speak about those things, but you ask yourself, but what is the proof here? I mean,
What is this stuff? What is this stuff that's all pervasive? I can't see it. I can't touch it.
Yeah, so we tell people, okay, the results you will see in all the projects that we did, in all the scientific work that we do. This is an actually hands-on application of this science to solve all kinds of environmental problems. So any science today that does not integrate in nature and solve environmental problems will cause problems. So we have to sort of bring life force, and this is what Biogeometry does, bring life force into modern technology. Imagine you sit in a car, if you have a Tesla car or something, and you sit in it. You'll be cooked with electromagnetic radiation, such a high intensity of electromagnetic radiation. It is very harmful for your body. Or if you sleep beside a router or something like this. So imagine now, why would the electricity produced by our modern technology be harmful when the Earth had its own electromagnetic fields that have life force in them and that are essential to our life? They're beneficent. Earth magnetism is beneficent to us. Carbon dioxide in nature is part of the energy exchange of nature. There's oxygen and carbon dioxide, and both are energizing aspects because they contain life force. Oxygen energizes us, giving us life force. Coming out of us, carbon dioxide is the energy carrier of life force to the plants, to the trees, to nature. So this duality of oxygen, carbon dioxide in the earth is life-giving. So what happened? How can we produce carbon emissions that are harmful? How can we produce electricity that is harmful? Well, the key here is that modern science has no place for life force.
But ether was removed, wasn't it, as a term from physics at the sort of turn of the last century?
Many scientists still speak about the background of the universe being empty space. How can it be empty space? Of course, today they have a problem to face when they found dark energy and dark matter out there. So it can't be that empty. But, they considered space as void when actually the empty space is the life force cradle of creation. Now, this is totally unaccepted by science, because the moment you say life force, there's nothing called life force in science, Right. And so what we do with biogeometry, let's say we come to your Tesla car. Instead of you being cooked in there, we come and introduce life force into the electromagnetic fields of the car. So all of a sudden, the electricity, the electromagnetic fields of the car carry life force. They are no different from those of the earth. And all of a sudden, you're into a healing cocoon. Because when the bird builds its nest, the chicks and the bird coming back to its nest have the life force is replenished. So we can actually, when we put it in a car, you sit in your car, you're replenished. It's a healing cocoon. Or you sit in front of the computer, and the computer radiates life force towards you. So it's giving you life. All the products around you would radiate this life force. So all our biogeometry solutions depend on really bringing back life force into the formula. And what I'm speaking, the examples I gave you are not far-fetched, because I've worked on airplanes, I've worked on cars, I've worked on ships. And in Switzerland here, I worked on 2 projects 20 years ago that are still valid till today, of areas in Switzerland, whole regions in Switzerland that were plagued with electrosmog. and they had lots of problems, health problems. The plants, health of plants or animals. The cows were not giving as much milk as before. They were becoming infertile. The migrating birds would move away. Wild animals would go away from the forests. And all the other symptoms, health symptoms, that were new to the population there. But you would look at them as normal. All the chronic diseases you have today in a modern city, to you, it's normal. Normal, you have backaches, you have high blood pressure, whatever, you have ear problem. All those things are like chronic diseases that can come up, and medicine cannot cure them, they just manage them. The reason is that they are environmentally caused. Now, when we went to the first town in Switzerland called the area of Hamburg, and the second one was the area of Hirschberg, a very strange thing happened when we placed the Biogeometry solutions. 60% of all health symptoms were reduced.
Wow.
So 60%.
You don't get a result like that very often in science.
Yes, well, that means that, and actually the assessment was done by the Swiss Parliament. The doctors from the Swiss Parliament came, assessed the projects, and they produced the graph showing 60% of symptoms were reduced. Migrating birds came back. Wild animals came back in the forest. The cows were fertile again. The milk production increased. So they called it in the news the miracle of Hamburg. I was for some time on every newspaper in Switzerland and on TV and everything. They couldn't believe it. In the beginning, people who say, "Oh, okay, he's a scientist from Switzerland and all that, respectable professor and all that, but this is too much, maybe he's an ancient Egyptian magician or something, because what he is doing is impossible, And then the government gave us a second region, and we did the same thing with the second region. And the people are very happy till today. Anytime you're in Switzerland, I can introduce you, can go visit them and see the way they live, the harmony in which they live. So all our projects are actually based on practical applications, whether it's in a car, it's in an airplane, it's in a town, or whatever. We can actually introduce biogeometry to change the harmful effect of carbon emissions out of your combustion engine, or change the effect of electromagnetic radiation in your car, you see. Yeah. This is, you have to experience it to believe it.
Yeah. So my immediate question is, just as you're talking, first of all, this is fantastic. This is mind-blowing stuff. Exactly what I wanted on this podcast. But what are these shapes then? What do you do? Are you drawing triangles in the fields? Like what does it look like?
No, you see, there are laws that govern natural shapes. So if you want to look for the proper shapes, look in nature. Look at the shape of a tree. Look at the shape of the body of a human being. We do in our courses some very interesting experiments. I bring the wooden mannequin in the shape of a human being, the one you can change the arms and all that.
Yeah, my kids have got one, yeah.
Okay, and then I bring instruments with which you can measure energy. And I tell the people, if the statue is alive, then you should be able to detect all types of energies in that statue. Emotional energy, mental energy. You should be able to detect energy centers like the chakras that human beings have. You should be able to detect those on the statue. And people are perplexed. How come the statue is motionless? I tell them, it is shaped. The secret is in the shape. it is alive on all higher levels because it's the shape of a human being. So the statue is like an archetypal statue of a human form. And then you understand why the ancients erected their statues over power spots. They built them with certain archetypal proportions. So those statues radiated health, harmony in the population. So the statue healed the population. The statue connected them to higher mental realms from which they got oracles. The statue, people didn't build those statues to worship them. Today, some people think those statues are statues of gods that the people worshipped. It wasn't like that. It was a very scientific thing. I can get one of those statues and put it in your home or put it in any place. And through certain manipulations of the statue, through certain proportions, it could harmonize the whole area. Wow. Just by having a statue of the human being. But the human form is a bit complex. So we've analyzed that. So we make simpler shapes, very simpler shapes like that, like small stands that have geometrical shapes, very simple geometrical shapes. And those stands you can put in place and it would actually harmonize the area. So biogeometry at the end is very difficult to believe, because if I give you a little shape you put in your living room or in your bedroom, and all of a sudden your life changes because all those side effects or all this electromagnetic stress that you have will sort of be reduced to nothing. You can't believe that this little shape in my home is doing it. It seems, yes, in the hotel where I am, I have a little shape with me like that. I put it on the desk on the hotel. So all the electricity behind the headboard and all that doesn't give me a headache in the morning. So biogeometry is so, once you know how to develop biogeometrical shapes, it is so simple and so cost-effective that it's very difficult to believe to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, even though I'm steeped in a lot of this stuff, and I'm still fascinated and astounded. So yeah, the simplicity of this. So back to my question in terms of the results you had around Hamburg. You were erecting certain statues, and these were having an impact.
Well, I'll tell you what I did in Hamburg. When you have a huge region, because it wasn't just a little village, it was several villages, it was a huge area. And now those statues were about that big as this pen, like that. They looked like little candlesticks like this. And some of them look like as if they're emitters. They have a point like this, and they have some dials and discs and things on them like this. They look like emitters. So the area was huge. So if I were to put a shape in the ground, just like that, or in a house or something, I'd need thousands of shapes because the area was too big. So I need a carrier to carry this energy quality. So I found that they had a tower, a mobile communication tower, in the church tower itself. So I thought now I could get 3 shapes and fix them, point them at every antenna of the mobile communication. So when the radiation went out, it would carry the quality I want. It would piggyback on mobile communication and reach every house in the area. So I could use actually just on every antenna, because the antenna is 3 antennas like that on a pole. So I would use, on every antenna, I'd use 3 emitters and put this energy and have it carried to the whole region. Now, they came to me, and the government asked me to make a second project as a pilot project for a total Swiss solution for the whole country. And the whole idea was that instead of piggybacking using on mobile communication, use something else. Because if you put your shapes on our antennas or something like that, people might think you're correcting some harm we are doing. You know, so they say, I told them, well, I don't have to be near the antenna. I could put the emitter away from the antenna, pointing at it. They say, still yes, but the fact that you're pointing at it, it's like a finger pointing at the culprit. Right. So I said, okay, in the new area, I'll use a solution. I used all over the Middle East, in many towns and deserts and things like that. I will use the energy grids of the earth. You know, there are energy lines running in the earth. So I thought I'll come to crossing points of the energy lines of the earth, and I'll get the shape, put it in a tube, put some water in the tube, close it, and then put it in the ground. I dig a hole maybe 1 meter deep and then put it there and cover it up. And so its energy will be carried along the Earth energy lines, so I can use them. And actually there, I went to one central spot where I had most lines crossing. And I used, in that spot, in a specific pattern, I put 12 tubes with 12 different geometrical shapes in the tubes in the center of the valley of Hirschberg and Appenzell. Now, the valley has a 10-kilometer radius, and then you have the mountains. And from this central spot, we harmonized the whole valley. So all the problems there were gone. The cow problems, the cows were sick and all that, all those problems, environmental problems, were solved. So this was sort of the prototype for a total Swiss solution. And we moved ahead later on discussing the total Swiss solution for the whole country. Until now, it didn't materialize because I backed up a bit for 2 reasons. One reason, I had moved out of Switzerland to Canada. And then the other reason was it was getting too political involvement between parties and things like that. And then so it didn't go along. But I come every year, they call me, the government gets in touch with me if they have a problem somewhere in one of the areas, or whenever they change anything in the areas of Hamburg and Hirschberg, they call me and I go. And just to, they're happy when I go and check the work, or they tell me if you have some newer shapes to put instead or something like that. So I keep doing that all the time. So that's showing that, imagine that smart cities that are actually the biggest culprit in climate change. And the reason for that, let's go, if you go to old cities, like a city like Zurich, where I am here, or all the old cities in Europe and even in the States, everywhere, you'll find that they have been planned according to ancient sciences, placing all the roads and the town pattern and all that on earth energy grids, so that the town grows from the earth. When you do that, the life force of the earth flows into the town. This has been applied in a very late, reduced form by the Freemasons when they planned Washington, when they planned Rome, Paris, even Cairo. They planned them according to earth energies. Zurich, where I am at the moment, is planned on those earth energies. And you have in Zurich 1,200 sacred water fountains. Every 100 meters on the street, you find a fountain with sacred waters, healing waters in the streets of Zurich. So when cities are planned like that, they are full of life force. That's the way the ancients used to plan their cities. Today we have no notion of life force. So we just plant our city there. We just plan it whichever way we think, according to traffic, according to modern principles and all that. And there's no life force flowing into it. So you have, in smart cities, you have 100 times more sensors and electromagnetic activity than older cities. And so you create a very harmful situation that will actually produce so much heat into the atmosphere and so much problems for health problems for humans, animals, and plants in the cities. So it's important to use biogeometry solutions in smart cities, otherwise, or smart cars or whatever you do, because
smart fridges.
Yes, if you cannot appreciate the fact that your connection to creation and to the earth and to health in general is based on life force interaction, our civilization will soon be lost, because you've taken the most important concept in creation, which is life force, and sort of put it out of your dictionary.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. You used this term earlier, quality of energy. I'm interested in that because certainly, yeah, I had this notion that energy is either strong or it's weak. I don't really think about energy as having different qualities. So what do you, yeah, can you talk a bit more about quality of energy?
Well, I'll give you an example. Imagine energy has, let's say, different colors. Every color is a quality. It's a different quality. But you can have the intensity of color. You can increase it or decrease it. You can have it very light or very dense. So this would give you the strength of the energy itself. This is the quantitative aspect. Right. Now, the different colors of this energy, or contained in this energy, would be the energy the qualities within the energy. And in sacred power spots, you have an additional energy quality, which is called the centering quality. You know, the vortex coming up creates a centering quality that balances all other energy qualities. So in sacred power spots, you actually have a harmonizing, balancing through life force of all colors. That's why humanity actually developed along sacred power spots. If I were to say which is the most important factor that shaped the development of history, of development of humanity, I would say it's the sacred power spots.
Fascinating. Yeah. We don't tend to think about that in terms of humans. We talk about the development of agriculture and so on, but
yeah, all you need, you know,
don't think about that.
In old times, they had the old churches in your area. They had the temples. They had the most people used to look at those as the center of life. When they did their commercial activities and all that, they went around those sacred monuments. They sat there in the areas, their healing, as everything centered around those sacred spots. Today, sacred spots are everywhere, and people are not, they have no connection to them anymore.
No.
And then we have problems of all those chronic diseases, of cancers, of psychological problems, and all that. All we have to do is bring back the sacred connection to the earth, and things will change dramatically.
Right, as you've shown with your experiments, and yeah, and I as I mentioned to you before we came on the show, you know, there's some rigor in the research here. You mentioned about putting certain shapes in cars, and you've put instruments into those cars to measure the quality of the environment within, and found a clear correlation.
Yeah, we don't measure
when the shape's there and when it's not. Right?
Yeah, we don't measure the car itself. You see, we measure, we get some diagnostic equipment with the doctors, and they measure the life functions of the human being sitting in the car. So they measure your breath, they measure all the problems you have in your body before you go in the car and when you're out of the car and inside the car, and they compare. And then what will happen is, before we put the car solution, you have the person in the car much worse than when he's outside the car. Now, when you put the Biogeometry solution, all of a sudden, the person in the car becomes much better than when he is outside the car. That's what Biogeometry does. Same in an airplane, same. We did...
this is with EEG scans and eye movements, and I'm looking at the research here. Breathing frequency, pulse rate, oxygen saturations, all of these things are measured, and we can see.
Yeah, we don't do the measurement. In every project, we get an independent institution to do the measurements for us.
Yeah, and this I find, just very reassuring, really, for somebody. As I said, I come from a scientific background, so to have this evidence here, it makes the whole story much more compelling.
Remember, I'm an engineer myself, so I have to.
Amongst many things.
I wouldn't have developed the physics of quality if I wasn't an engineer, because everybody can go along the psychic road. Everybody will have psychic experiences. Nobody didn't go through them any time in his life. But as an engineer, I had to develop a physics of quality. Let me tell you a word about this physics of quality. Now, you identify yourself as Richard because your senses are working. If you're without sensory perception, you wouldn't exist. Now, even the material world that you're in, without having a sense of touch, there would be no material world for you. If your senses also create your linearity of time-space. So in our perceived reality, time moves forward in a line. That's why we're born, we age, we die. But that is only the sensory world. Now, the sensory physical world is a world that is based on only some between 1 and 2% of the vibrational ranges of reality. Your ranges only react with this little areas of 1 or 2%. Now, every species on Earth has its own 2%. They are not all the same like ours. Viruses might have their 2% shifted a bit, microbes shifted a bit, animals shifted a bit. So imagine that the sensory perception forms your perceived reality, which forms your material world. So there are actually a hierarchy of superimposed. So many material worlds are superimposed. And the only one that becomes material to you is the ones on which your senses are tuned. Okay. If your sensory perception is based on working senses, you have to have a living brain, a living head for your senses for you to exist. For you to have a living brain, you have to have blood pumped up to your head in order for your senses to start working. So the blood comes from somewhere else, from the heart and all that. So your existence is a secondary state, not a primary one. The primary one is the source sending you that energy to the brain. Right. So imagine now your heart, all your biological functions that send energy to your brain. Those biological functions are not within linear time and space, because the linear time and space is created by them. It's the second phase. So what runs your biological functions then? If they're not run by the 2% you're aware of. Your biological functions are run by the 98% of the universe, of the laws of the universe. Right. So the universe runs your biological functions, not your perceived reality. And so it would be interesting to know what happens in the 98%. You see? So the physics of quality is the physics of the 98% of the extrasensory 98%. That's where the physics of quality works. Now, the laws of cause and effect, all the laws that we know before and after, they are laws within linear time and space. If the 98% has no linear time and space, but multidimensional time and space, that means all those laws don't work there. So right. That's why you cannot directly perceive your subconscious. 98%, how do I connect to the 90? What laws are transcendental if cause and effect of all those things are limited? It's the law of resonance. If you have a musical instrument and you hit any string, resonance will continue on every string, double or half its length. So you'll have resonance along the musical instruments. Resonance means exchange of information, exchange of qualities. Resonance will have to be, it's a law that will connect all the strings of the instrument. Now imagine if I take that instrument from the 2% in which you hear it, extend it from one side all the way down string length to 0, and from the other side all the way string length to infinity, I would have an instrument sort of covering all of creation.
Right. Yeah, that would be realities. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And the only law of information exchange in that instrument would be resonance.
Mm.
So here we built a physics of quality by using the laws of resonance to access any dimension in there. And the laws of resonance show us that there is a universal unity of the 98% and the 100%, let's say, including the 2%. There's a universal unity. So if there is a universal unity and information exchange through all those levels that affect us, like our body being run by the universe, then this is the physics that we need to understand the invisible relationships, life force, everything behind or fueling our 2%. So right. This is the actual physics of quality. Now you can ask me a question. If my organ functions, biological functions, are run by multidimensional universe beyond linear time, then I should live forever. Logic. Yeah, why don't I live forever?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, this energy source never runs out, so why do I run out?
Yes. Well, the organ functions, they have a physical aspect, and then they have the higher vitality, emotional, mental levels in them. All the higher levels are multidimensional. Now, your physical part of your biological functions, because you have become aware of your body, you listen to your heartbeat, you see your digestion, by your awareness of your body, you pull the material part of your physical organs into linear time. And so you age.
Okay.
The material part. But
so if I give up my perception of time, do I live forever?
Well, you will in your immortal soul. Once you give up that body, you're in your immortal soul, living there forever.
Right.
So
yeah,
I'm taking you a bit very slowly into the surface. I don't want to go too deep now, you see.
No. So one question that came up as you were describing that. Okay, so I understand this law of resonance, and if I've got my something that's happening in my 2%,
yeah,
how can I know whether or not it's resonated with something in the 98%? Like, how can I know that there's a relationship there?
Well, there is a relationship in any case, because you understand through the physics of quality that the whole universe, everything is one unity. So the thing is, it's not the 2% affects the 98% minimally, while the 98%, they really run all the functions of your life that you are not aware of. Now, let me tell you one thing. All our communication methods here are based on linearity. Talk, everything is based on linearity. Thought, understanding, personifying things, and all that. Now, the subconscious is multidimensional, so it will not understand any of that. The only thing that the subconscious understands is not quantity, not quantitative things. It understands qualities. And so what really goes through to the subconscious is the quality of motion, the quality of things. When I say quality of motion, quality of things, that means shape. The language of the subconscious of the 98% is shape, because shape is quality. And this is the power of shape, you see. Even music has shape when it goes over to the other side.
Right.
So this is this relationship between, I think we would need to sit together for several hours to get through all those topics, you know.
Well, yeah, no, I'm sure, but let's make the most of the time we do have. So, but it seems like you're saying something else there. Then that our subconscious is that 98%. So, like, are you sort of saying that our subconscious is the whole of the rest of this unity?
Yes, your subconscious. You see, when you're beyond linear time and space, you are your time and space is not. Wait. Your time and space is not, let's say, fixed in any linearity or any direction. So you're equally, from space-wise, you're equally individual, collective, and universal. Time-wise, you're equally present, past, and future. See, this is multidimensionality. So, being that, speaking about your subconscious or your universal soul, the one we will stay in forever, you are equally individual and equally universal. It's very difficult to understand those concepts when you're living in this linearity, when you have opposites. It's very difficult to understand a dimension where the opposites interact in such a way that they become a unity.
Yes. But some of this is making sense for me. I certainly can appreciate that the perception that we have is a very limited as regards to all of.
Yes, I have a book called Hidden Reality.
Yes.
It's a thick book called Hidden Reality, The Physics of Quality. That explains all those things. And they are on YouTube too. If you go on YouTube, search for Biogeometry, you'll find explanations of Hidden Reality in English and in Arabic on YouTube.
Yes. And so are there any, well, I suppose this does get to into your book in terms of this other applications of shape and this understanding of the physics of quality, and how we can then use these shapes not just in sort of the general sense of improving the qualities of a valley, let's say. But I noticed in the book we can also use these shapes to address very specific issues in the body and particular ailments. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Well, the shapes you have, this book is called Biogeometry Signatures.
Yes.
So, if you look at the human body, in Chinese medicine, they speak about meridians. That means that the shape of the body, you have energy lines running along the shape of the body. The 12 meridians of Chinese medicine on which acupuncture or acupressure are based. Well, you treat in Chinese medicine by putting pressure or a needle on those lines because they're connected to organ functions. Now, similarly, not taking the human body as a whole, but every shape of every organ, of every cell, must have a linear energy structure running through it. And the shapes of this linear flow give you the function. So every organ would have several lines of linear flows in it, and the physical actually is formed around this energy. Imagine a wire mesh like that, and the physical shape of the organ is built on it. Now, I can't reach every organ inside with a needle like I do with acupuncture. So I get the shape, this wire shape, and I flatten it as 2D and place it on the body. When I place it on the body, it's a wire shape that's open-ended. So part of the energy of the body will go through it like this. When it goes through it, the energy shape will enter into resonance with the similar energy shape in the body, and there, through resonance, I have communication. So now, if I go into that shape that we draw, and then I can sort of tweak a bit some parts of it to ensure the harmonious connection to higher levels of energy. Those shapes will actually bring harmony to the energy flow inside. And as the shape outside is solid, it will affect the one inside, which is still volatile. This will affect this, and then the energy function will be harmonized. The nice thing about those shapes, you can place them on your body, you can visualize them, you can take a pen and draw them on your hands. They will work. And we have an app on Apple that you can go into the app, and there you can choose the shapes you want, and you even choose a paper emitter, the background of an emitter. You put the shapes on the emitter and then print it out, put it on your table, and it will work on your body even at a distance. So those shapes have many ways by which they work.
Yeah, a few things are starting to click for me now, right? So we've got this premise that there's this all-pervasive energy. We create any shape, that energy is going to flow through it.
Yeah.
As it flows through it, it's going to resonate with a similar shape over here. And so if I can, and that, as you say, that creates the connection. And if I manipulate this one shape and have it tuned in, I'm creating a beneficial effect over there.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's resonating with one of the laws of nature, one of the energy laws of nature. So those shapes are a very good way of interacting energetically with your body. We tell people, although some people have some miraculous results with them, the more something is related to energy, like somebody who has epilepsy or things like that, a shape like that could have an immediate effect. If you break your leg, you need to go to the doctor. So we always say energy medicine or biosignature, those signatures and energy medicine are a support. They are not an alternative to traditional medical care. They're just an energetic support. So what happens is when you are undergoing medical care, if the energy of your body is adjusted, the healing through medical care will become much, much faster and much better.
Yes.
Because it's happening on a proper background.
Yes. And for where it's purely energy related, then that by itself may have an effect, but it would only be for the class.
But I mean, people should know that you can have so many energy effects. People are writing, I use this by signature, I did this. Okay. But don't take it instead of medical care. Right. That's what we say. And then we have them, you see, I have here on a ring, the ring I'm wearing on my finger here has biosignatures on it. I also, you can wear it as a pendant like this, you see. Here, it's a pendant. See, a pendant with biosignatures on it.
Yes. Fascinating.
Okay, and you can also wear them as a single biosignature. So this is, I have here a single, like a...
Oh, I see, yes.
Yeah, you can wear them as a single biosignature, part of a pendant, and so on.
Yes. And for those just listening, if you get the book Biogeometry Signatures, you'll see all of these fantastic shapes drawn out. Yes, wonderful. Something I wanted to ask you about, given how current it is this discovery beneath the pyramids. Have you followed that?
Yes, I've followed it. Well, I'll tell you something about this discovery. If you look at the pyramids, like we said, the pyramids, they are actually built on sacred power spots. So there's a water source down there. Under the pyramids, you have 3 or 4 layers, like a whole underground city under the pyramid plateau. So we know it exists. Some parts of it have been covered and all that. So it's like an underground city. Now, I can draw a plan of the underground city without even going there because I know how the ancients built them. Now, the ancients would map all the energy lines, the grid lines on the earth, top of the earth, and they would place their roads or corridors on the energy lines and their holes and buildings on the crossings. So there's a whole city under there that, in my first book, I have a picture of the pyramids, and I have I show the energy lines around the pyramids, and they could be actually the master plan of the underground cities. But now, jumping to conclusions that I have a tube 600 meters down or 2,000 feet down, or I have, all those things.
2 kilometers is one of the reports.
Yeah, 2 kilometers. It's far-fetched because the pyramids are not like this. People want to make the pyramids producing modern forms of energy, electricity, I don't know what, all that. When actually the pharaohs could have done that, they wouldn't do it because their primary energy was life force. So the pyramids are built on sacred power spots, on certain crossings, and the whole city under the pyramids is built in their sacred cities, and they're nourished by life force. They interact with life force. But the 2 kilometer thing and all that, in my opinion, it's far-fetched. It doesn't fit with anything, because anytime somebody tries to explain ancient Egypt as building things to produce modern types of energies, when the ancient Egyptians knew very well that the modern types of energies, whether it's radioactivity, whether it's electricity, all that, are minor failed energies, harmful energies, while they used life force, which is a holistic, beneficent energy. So any solutions you want to look for, any technical solutions, look for life force and not other energies. Maybe in the future, we can use life force to fuel our vehicles, our planes and things like that using life force. So if you want to look for something in ancient Egypt, it has to be related to life force as the primary energy. So I think there are definitely things under the pyramids. It's a 3-layer city. And I know from speaking to elderly people in the region around the pyramids that before they built the walls, the children in summer, they used to go into those underground cities in those 3 levels, and they used to go to the lowest level, and they used to swim there in summer, in the waters down there. So the people living in the villages there know exactly every corridor, every hole in under the pyramids. They know even more than the Egyptologists.
Okay. So even if they were not used to generate electricity in the way we think of it today, and they were used to harness life force energy, is it, yeah, I guess what would be the application of that life force energy, for the region? I mean, how is it being used, that life force energy?
Well, amplifying life force, you could actually fuel all motion, all life, all growth, all plants. You could do healing, you could do medicine with life force. But this comes from an era before the pre-dynastic era where people really used those life force. The history of Egypt goes back 50,000 years. They call the first civilization 50,000 BC. It's called the Netero civilization. And then 12,000 BC came the Shamsuhor civilization, and then the dynastic period. Now, there are in Italy, in Palermo, and in Turin, are papyrus and stones of which they have a list of those dynasties. The Greek priest Maniton in Egypt has produced a list of those dynasties that goes back to 50,000 years. So there were earlier civilizations using life force as primary energy. And that's in the time of the Netero and Shamsuhor.
Okay.
And they were also using them in multidimensional time, because in prehistoric times, if you go back 50,000 years, the focus of perception in the brain was not in the left quantitative aspect. They were morely focused in the right brain, partly like animals. So they were connected to the laws of nature. So in those multidimensional realms, that they call them the time before time. Why did they say the time before time? Because linear time is related to left brain perception. If there was a humanity with a right brain perception, let's say, they would be living in multidimensional time. So it's only when the brain shifted to the left brain perception, maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years before BC, during this shift was the creation of the modern brain, of modern humanity living in linear time. A humanity living in multidimensional time with all the power that existed there could use life force in every aspect.
Right. And do you think this may explain why some of these anomalies, where they're asking, well, how did they get these beautiful slabs with such precision, and how did they move these monumental stones around? Like, is life force energy perhaps part of that explanation?
Well, of course, you see, life force is the background. It's like, quoting Joseph Campbell when he says, myth is the hero with 1,000 faces. Life force is actually the hero with 1,000,000,000 faces.
Okay, yes.
You can find life force in the growth of a plant. You can find them in the medicinal properties of things. And life force is the cradle on which divinity imagines creation. It's the container of creation. Creation arises inside a life force container.
Right. Yeah. And I take that point. And do you suspect then that they ancient civilizations were able to harness this life force energies in a way that allowed them to do things that perhaps we can't even do today?
Yeah, of course, they had all those possibilities, because once you live into the multi-dimensionality of time-space, finish. You can move forward and backwards in time. You can move things in space. There's nothing you can't do, you see. And that's the period, those ancient periods described in many scriptures as having fallen angels or hybrid creatures on earth or things like that. This is a modern way of describing a different humanity.
Right. They weren't necessarily, green-skinned, giants. They may have just been like us, but with a
there were giants. There were things. I mean, on Earth, you could have many types of human beings living together on Earth, but we shouldn't imagine them as we think of very extraterrestrial things that we see in all those computer generated creatures. Or no, they were in many ways human-like. They were hybrid in a way. Hybrid because the brain functioned multidimensionally.
Right. Okay. And then they get imagined as aliens, but maybe that's too literal a way of thinking about just a different type of human. Right. Fascinating. Wow. we started with squiggles that might make your EMF less harmful in your Tesla. We've ended it. Hybrid humans capable of multidimensional existence. Yeah. Wow. There's so much to go on here. Where do you think we're headed then as a race? Do you think we're at a place where we may start to embrace life force energy and these ideas? Do you see an interest growing, or is that even further in the distance? What do you think in terms of where we're at today?
I think we are at crossroads. You bring life force into modern technology, or modern technology will destroy our civilization.
Right.
There's no in between. But if you bring life force into modern technology, you create a tremendous advancement in civilization. You create a new era where modern technology and life force become sort of part of one living entity, one new type of civilization. But if we think that we can move on with modern technology in a digital world without needing the natural life force of the earth, you're wrong, because we are living inside the earth. We are organisms without the earth, like your body has immune cells, has other cells, has digestive cells. Your body has many cells in it. They live as part of that body. Now, we are cells in the body of the earth, in the whole body of the earth. So if you distance yourself from the life force of that creature of which you are part, you will be expelled out of its system. So it's very simple to understand. Imagine your hand like this. Your hand has so many, in 1 square inch, you have so many millions of bacteria working here to the benefit of your body, your skin, and all that. Now, if they decide not to do their job properly and play around, you'll have some skin problems. So the first thing you'll do, you will scratch. If you scratch, then away with them. You've killed the 2,000 that were doing your problem, causing the problem here. You just scratch them off. So are we waiting for the earth to scratch?
Right. Yeah. Or are we going to get in line?
Or are we going to get in line? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that's a great place to end it on that choice. Wow. This has been wonderful. Somebody in the comments said, if you interview, you should have read his books. And I actually agree with this troll, because I'm now thinking I really want to read the book, the Hidden Reality book that you mentioned. What was the title?
Hidden Reality.
Yeah, it was Hidden Reality.
Hidden Reality, and the subtitle is Physics of Quality.
Physics of Quality. If you would be game, I'm now really enthusiastic about reading that and maybe dedicating an episode to that.
Well, I'm here whenever you're ready.
Yeah. I feel like if I had a better grounding on what you were talking about there, we could have had a very rich conversation that may be beneficial to the audience. I've got one more question in the chat, actually. Do you believe in reincarnation, Ibrahim?
Well, we're opening a big subject, but look, whenever you're dealing with things in your understanding, believe, understand, and all that, understanding things from the subconscious, that means information from a multidimensional configuration has to be accessed through linearity. So any information from there will come over, will have to be time-stamped, space-stamped into linearity, and then it has to undergo some form of personification, to be separated from the background. Personification means it's taken into your cultural database and it's given a personality, then you can perceive it and understand it. Now, when you speak about many things here, you always speak chronologically, before and after and all that. So you speak about life after death. Okay, to understand it here, you can say life after death, because your focus now is not in your immortal soul, it's on your physical body. So you speak about when you shift over, it's life after death. But in reality, there is multidimensional time over there. So there's no before and after. So it's the other existence. It's the other existence on which you float like a leaf floating over the ocean. The other existence is always there. So every night when you're asleep, you're there. So the moment you die and move there, you won't be in a strange place. It's waking up the next day and the day after and having been there all your life. But so it's the other life, not the afterlife. Now, to understand reincarnation, look at it that way. You are here, and then you have a certain interest. The interest has to start here. A certain interest in art, in philosophy, in whatever. This interest will trigger resonance on a subconscious level with many other lives having the same interests. And here there will be an exchange of information. Those other lives there'll be a copy of them in your immortal soul in your subconscious, but there will be a copy of you in their subconscious. And so on. Every time you have an interest, this new copy comes in. It is translated in your linear time life here, and it becomes a stage in your unconscious evolution. It has been triggered from here, but in reality what happens, reincarnation, don't look at it as linear, because in this model I'm explaining, now that you've connected, you exist in that other personality too. So bringing it here to time and space, you like art. You, all of a sudden, your subconscious resonated with Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci becomes part of your development here. So he becomes part of your artistic development in this life, and only in the things you're interested in. If you did other things that would be against your principles, they wouldn't come over. Only the things that resonate with you. But then you exist in Leonardo's subconscious. So you say, how come I, from the future, exist in Leonardo's subconscious in the past?
Yes.
Well, there is total exchange of information. So you have played, as you are today, have played a part in Leonardo's evolution in his lifetime when you look at it here. You see?
Mm.
So it's too complex to understand, but here the easy way to understand it is telling you live separate lives, you live so many lives and all that, but all the lives you're going to live for your final development are happening right here and now within your subconscious as development steps within this life. So this life includes all the incarnations in it and all your development in it. It's a bit different.
I heard the words. The words, Ibrahim, and they were definitely English. And I have a vague sense of something meaningful in what you've said. But then I feel like there's a lot probably for me to process as I go away from this podcast. But yeah.
Well, we'll have another one soon, and we'll go more into those matters.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. This has been such a rich conversation, and it feels like you're just opening me up to new worlds that I'm now excited to explore. So I appreciate that. Wow, what a font you are.
Well, thank you, Richard. It was a nice meeting you here. We had a really nice conversation.
Yeah. Yes, we absolutely did. So thank you once again. So for people who are particularly interested in the biogeometry signatures, book, this is a great book, Harmonizing the Body's Subtle Energy Exchange with the Environment. And there's so much practical application of what we've been talking about in that book. For use on your routers, in your cars, to wear on your body. We'll put a link to that as well as the other books. Where else would you send people, Karim, who are interested in what we've been talking about?
Well, they could go, like I said, on YouTube. Just write Biogeometry, and you'll go into our channel on YouTube.
Brilliant.
And if you want to look at our research and things like that, then go at www.biogeometry.com.
www.biogeometry.com. And the app that you mentioned, people can find their way to the app from there. Yes,
it's a biosignature app by Biogeometry. I don't remember the name. It's supposed to be coming out today or tomorrow. It's a new app. We put that book in the form of an app.
Okay, right, yeah.
So you find it on Apple.
Great.
You go into Apple, and if you search for biosignature, Biogeometry, or something like that, you should find it in the next day or two.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, if you can get us a link to that before we publish the episode, we can put a direct link to that.
If I maybe this evening, I'll meet my daughter and get the link from her and send it to you.
That would be great. That would be great. And then people can click straight to it. I'll definitely be one of those people clicking. I'm excited to print some of this stuff out and experiment and have a play. Wonderful. Okay. Yeah. Thanks again.
Well,
thank you for a mind-bending, entertaining, enthralling conversation.
Well, thank you, Richard. It was my pleasure being with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.